Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Friday, July 5th. Do you know what's going on in clown world? Well, there is a never-ending assaults to our senses and our sanity. As you guys are, if you're familiar with the channel here, every Friday we get Bryce, our financial whisperer, to come on and talk about things that are not financial advice, but the kind of the underground, the scuttlebutt, the water cooler talk, all of the things that do impact the financial world. And just before, I wanted to make that disclaimer and take a second here to explain to you guys that the difference between what some of what we talk about and actual financial advice. If you want the actual financial advice, the place you go is whatsupcanada.org, and you'll see up in the top here, if you can see my mouse, a precious metals sign. You can click that, or you can come down here and you can click on the link there, and it's going to take you to this page right here. And that is where you give them your information, and you're going to get a call from one of the guys, and then you guys can get to the heart of what you need to know with some real financial advice, including Mr. Bryce Wade, one of the all-stars of the team over there at New World Precious Metals. And so the reason why we do this show, and I wanted to just kind of chew on this for a minute when we're getting started here, because we're getting a lot of new people. People are finding us in alternative platforms. People are more interested in finding out and figuring out what's coming, what they can do about it, and where they can go. So this is kind of where we digest some of the insanity that's out there and kind of try to help them the noise make sense, at least, so that people, wherever they are, whatever they need to do, they at least have some clarity on what they're doing, whether it's with us or with New World Precious Metals or anywhere else out there. This is becoming a more and more of a priority worldwide. So this is why we do this. This is us giving back to you the best, stuff that we can sort out to help it make sense. So what's going mad in clown worlds today, this week, Bryce? I know we talked a little bit. There's a couple of things that we're going to start to do on the show here with giving some, tracking metrics just for conversation's sake around the water cooler. So we're going to dive into that here and including everything else in there. So from this point on, it's the ball's in your court, Bryce. Where do you want to start with some of the metrics and explain the changes, or some of the insanity and go to the metrics?
No, we'll start with some of the metrics. So I want to show everybody kind of what's happening in gold and silver right now. And I'm going to start doing this weekly. So this will kind of be one of the things that. So I make predictions, say, hey, this could happen in the future. Well, what is the actual fallout in gold and silver? That's what we're known for. So what does that actually look like, right? And so you can see here that we're at basically just under 2,400. So the last peak that we hit was 2,450 or 2,460, I think. But 2,400 is a major kind of ceiling that we kind of hit, that like everything fell back down to under 2,400. And so when I did my first podcast online with I think it was Odessa Orlowitz back in November, gold was 1,850. And that's where it bottomed out at. So it went up to about 1,900, just under 2,000, went back down to 1,850, and it bounced off from 1,850, and now we're at 2,400. So in the
That's
last
$550 by my hillbilly math.
Exactly. And so that's gone up more or less, what is that, 30 odd percent, right? And so
Right.
just today, and from Wednesday was actually a little bit more. So just today, it's up 1.33%. That's quite a bit for gold. Usually gold doesn't move more than about 0.5%, usually 1% at the most per day. And that's a lot for gold to move. And so the other big thing that's happened is with silver. And so silver is kind of a barometer for what else is happening in the economy. In a specific sense, is that the silver is an industrial demand material, and it gets used in so anything military, like super high end military, they use a lot of silver because it's a higher it has a better conductivity, right?
Yep.
And so silver is kind of the poor man's gold, if you will. And don't take that the wrong way. I put all of my money into silver because it's a better value right now. Although there's lots of value in gold too, I think there's a better value in gold because of the ratio. Or sorry, in silver because of the ratio,
Huh.
right? And I can get into that if you want. But this went up 2.2% today, and since Wednesday, sorry, I'll show you this. So since Wednesday, which is basically here, it was at 2029, and so it's up $2 or about roughly 7% in 3 days. That's a big move for silver, right? That's quite a bit.
The one of the reasons why I wanted to start doing this with you week by week, getting a little bit more into the micro of this, because I'm getting a lot of people that are becoming, more considering leaving Canada or moving elsewhere. These kinds of things. They're looking at moving their wealth, their assets, their this sense of inflection as to what they can do to protect themselves, whether it's here or in other countries. That's one of the reasons why I chose to work with you guys, is because you guys already had that in mind beforehand. So this is where, watching it week by week by week is going to help people, start to think a little bit more seriously about what it's going to be like if they are doing some of those kinds of things. So I do want you to touch on that part of what you guys do that's a little bit different from others out there as well. And the other thing that I wanted to do is, this one's for the people that are out there watching. Please give us a share, help us get this message out there. And if you have questions, and you're not ready to go and set up an appointment to talk to the guys, by all means, throw them into the chat. This is meant to be an open forum of communications for people that have questions. I mean, I caution everybody, you don't want to put your financial resume out in the chat, but if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask and throw them out there
Yeah,
and we'll
absolutely.
get them.
So kind of one of the things that separates us from other bullion dealers is we have our wholesale program. So what that basically means is we have a vaulted service. So other companies have other vaulted services as well, but ours is international and worldwide. So if basically, as long as you're not a U.S. citizen specifically, you can work with and use this process to protect your wealth from inflation, hedge against the economy, the inevitable collapse of the economy that's coming, and you can move money around the planet if necessary. So if you're like, hey, I have all this money in Canada, I want to put it in gold and silver. I don't trust that Justin Trudeau isn't going to try and steal it, so I want to get it out of Canada. You can have it moved to another country if you want. So there's a lot of safety in that program. I'm heavily invested in it. Most of the company is as well. We all like it for a variety of reasons, because it's very liquid and it's very flexible. So it's one of the most liquid things that you can do, and it still gives you exposure to gold and silver and the price of gold and silver, which is going up considerably as you can tell.
Exactly.
And it's one of the safest things you can do because there's no third party risk. And what that means, so I mean, in the wholesale program, technically there is still third party risk because it's sitting in a vault, it's not in your hand. But other than that, there's nobody else that needs to do anything that means to protect your wealth. So I always use the example of investing in a home or a real estate asset, right? So if I invest in a duplex, let's say, if I don't have two people or two families in those two suites, I'm paying my mortgage. That's the risk. That's the third party risk of a real estate investment, is that somebody else has to be spending money at that place for that to be above water and working. So gold and
Right.
silver is one of the few asset classes that if you put your money in there, nobody else has to do anything, and you can still potentially make money, and you can at the very least protect your money from inflation.
Well, and that's the thing that, we have an international community of people. This message gets far and wide, and there are people that are moving around from country to country, even if they're coming back to Canada, on a regular basis. But this is something that's becoming more and more. How do I travel or move around without losing my stuff to this insanity that seems ever creeping in Canada? And I mean, we're in a time here where people should be benefiting from this, not worrying about losing it. But unfortunately, that's the government we have in place at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's prudent of people to be able to set yourself up for success. And what I mean by that is when people ask me, what do I do if I have X amount of money? And that kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because
Right.
I always ask people, how far on one spectrum are how far are you on the spectrum of into the system and the world's about to end, right? So if you're 100% like everything's about to collapse, like get all of my money out there, I'm going to have a different conversation with somebody than somebody that says, hey, I want to protect my net wealth, I want to still have exposure, but I don't want to pull everything out of my investments. I think we still got another couple of years, I want to plan for my future and my retirement. It's a totally different conversation, right? And so it
Right.
really depends on what the person I'm talking to is wanting to accomplish. And so if somebody comes to me and says, I only got 20 grand and what do I do with all my money? And this is the only 20 grand that I have, I would not even tell them to buy gold at all. Buy like, a few $1,000s of silver, maybe 5,000 on the max, and put the rest of that into stuff that's going to keep you alive, because that's more important, right? I want to make this point because it's important. Gold and silver is an intermediary between resources, right? That is the purpose of all currency, is so that it's an intermediary that you can go and get the resources, skills, or assets that you want or need to survive, right? So it's not it can be an investment, but it's supposed to be there for a transaction, right? A physical
It's the
transaction with
material of any transaction.
exactly. And so if you don't have any of the stuff that you need to stay alive, go do that first. Go get food so you have 90 days worth of food. Go get protection for yourself, for your family. Go make sure you have utensils and all of the stuff that you're going to need for if things go sideways, right? That should be your priority, is making sure that you and your family
Right.
are safe and able to stay alive before anything else, right? So
Right.
gold and silver is always second to that.
Right. And I think one of the best testimonials that I've gotten so far since you and I started doing this, I know we're off, we're not professionals in this and any of this, but I've had people that have messaged me and said they were able to take their lira and move it
Mhm.
into metals and protect, and so there's all different ways of leveraging what can be done just to protect your butts against this government if you have anything that is the grasp of bail-ins or seizure or capital gains or all of these insanities. These are things that people are more, they're looking for a lot of answers like that. And this isn't the person that this isn't the kind of information that the person that's looking for the $20, $25, coin or purchase, silver purchase, the $50 purchase, that kind of thing. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of great places out there where you guys can go and do that. But this is fundamentally, we're at a point in our economy and our situation here in Canada where this is going to be fundamentally important to moving forward, regardless of what happens over the next year of our political landscape.
Yeah, and I kind of I look at a lot of things fundamentally as well. Like, what is the basis? What is the underlying core? What is the fundamentals of what we're talking about and how something works, right? And so I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but if there's new viewers, or if there's older viewers, I apologize. But if there's anybody newer, this is kind of the important thing that you have to realize about gold and silver. There's only four ways to do a transaction. Okay, so it's barter, physical, exchange, which is gold and silver, but it could be bark or seashells or whatever. Basically, something that you agree that, like, I'm going to give you this and you're going to give me that, and that's an intermediary for getting something else, right? So a physical currency of some sort, gold and silver being one of them. There is fiat currency, which is essentially debt, and now there's cryptocurrency and central bank digital currencies, so which is a kind of an extension of the third one, but a technical upgrade to it. And those are the only four ways that you can make a transaction with anybody ever for any reason at all, right? Either somebody's going to give you something, or you're going to have to make an exchange of something. So if you don't have the physical asset that they want, well, you better have an intermediary, which is typically either cash, some sort of digital currency, fiat, or now gold and silver, because more people are kind of getting wise to the game that this is something that they might need to do to ensure that they can still do that, right? And
Right.
just to bring it back to my earlier point, the purpose of all those four things is to getting the resources, skills, or assets that you want to accomplish what you're trying to do, right? And so from that perspective, gold is gold and silver, but silver more for smaller transactions, is always going to be valuable. It's whether or not the other person on the other side of that transaction is going to accept that transaction, right? And so the more people that get into this, and the more people that are able and willing to do it, the better it is for everybody.
So this brings me to making a point in this. When we look at the demise of our system here, and whether we like it or not, the rest of the world creating a parallel system, whether we like it or not, i.e., in the BRICS system, which is based on not just gold, it's not diamonds, but it's metals. This is where in the multipolar world is going to be multiple levels of materials that will be this in effect currency and transaction. Those will be the commodities of doing business in anywhere else outside of Canada, and hopefully it should be in Canada here too when we get to the point of correction. But right now, so taking that in mind, in this expedited express way to alternative currencies in any capacity, not just here but abroad, there's a lot of a lot of shifts happening in the markets right now, and there's some people that are setting up to be winners and losers in all of this turmoil and confusion. So what do you see coming in the Overton window that people that pay attention to this kind of stuff might be wanting to put on their early radar?
There's a problem coming with real estate. So the real estate crash that happened in 2007, that's happening again. It's happening right now, and it's gonna eventually it'll come out. But I think that'll be one of the triggers for the actual financial collapse that we're facing. So everybody that's watching this has to understand there is. I can probably explain it visually better than I can explain it. So I'll bring up this slide because it'll kind of make this make sense. So there's unrealized losses. So what that means basically is in the investment world, if you make an investment, you don't. Let's say I invested in Tesla, right? I am big Tesla fan that I am. I'm going to invest in Tesla, right? So I
Mhm.
invested at $200. Okay, I saw it go up to 300. I'm super happy at 50% up, right? Elon Musk says some ridiculous nonsense. The FEC comes after him or whatever. It drops to 150, right? So I've lost $50. So that's an unrealized loss, and I only get that loss if I sell, right? So if I
Right,
don't sell, I don't incur that loss. I'm
right.
I'm I'm below, but I haven't actually taken that loss. I've invested, so my money's still there, right?
So
And I
that's
haven't taken that loss.
that's that expression underwater on their mortgage.
Exactly. And so what that means, and this is happening all across China right now, is that they have overbuilt ungodly amounts of real estate. So say there's enough space for 1 billion people to live. Well, they're estimating there's actually more than that, but they're estimating that they've overbuilt by 1 billion units. There's some ridiculous amount of money. There's whole cities that are literally empty, and there's like thousands of 50-story towers that have hundreds of units each, like 1,000 in some cases, right?
Yeah, I watched a video of these young fellas that went over there, and there's this. They have these mini theme cities. Like there's this
Yeah.
to
Oh, yeah.
scale exact replica, Paris, Hollywood, these
Yep.
kinds of things. They've built these things to scale. They are monumental. They are would cost trillions of dollars to build here, and they're ghost towns.
Yeah, and this is why, because so the reason that this happened is that real estate is about 30% of the Chinese economy. Okay, so that means like 30% of their GDP comes from real estate sales. And so what has essentially happened to Chinese people because of their communist garbage bullshit system that they have, that is also trying to be pushed here and there in the West, is that they have essentially stolen all of the wealth from the Chinese people because they put it all into, and we're talking generations. Like
Right.
I live in Vancouver. This is Vancouver behind me. This is the third most expensive place on the planet to buy real estate. Okay, Beijing's number one, right? And then that's in relation to how much money per capita, not per capita, how much money average income as a multiple of the price of the property, right? So for here, the average salary is like I think like 80K or 100K or something like that, but it's $1 million, right? So that's basically a 10x. Let's say if it's 100K, let's just call it 100K to make the math easy. So if the real estate's a million and my average income is 100K, it's 10x my income to buy something. To buy that property, right? As an average. So back in after the war, we're talking a 2x. So somebody would get paid like $4,000 a year or something, and a place
Right.
would cost them like 8K or something, and you would have a
Right.
home on a property, right? So the amount of money that it now costs to get into property is insane, right? And so in China, it's even crazier. And so you had generations, like literally like 2 or 3 generations of Chinese people would save and save and save so they could have put a down payment on a house and own something in one of these major cities. And they don't even own it because it's a lease, 70-year lease. You don't even own it.
So, and we're getting that way here with these like reverse mortgages where they're
Yes.
giving you back some of your equity. So it kind of, in essence, works out the same way. But this is a point that I wanted a couple points I wanted to string together on this. You know, it used to be the old rule of thumb here for decades and decades and decades. The model was the rate of inflation was 100% every 10 years, and the rate of your wages were going up every 4 years. Now, here in the last a couple of years, we've gotten it to 400% in the 10 years versus versus 100% in 10 years. And now, where this is going to burst, and I don't know, you can tell me probably in more complex terms, but our country is, through this intended destruction, has been recording an inflated inverted housing market as our gross domestic profits of our country in order to obtain financing and printing money. So this is a giant scam that's about to pop because it's absolutely criminal what they've been doing in this, and all of these people that are inverted in their mortgages and underwater. This is, I think, what you see, what you're saying is what if I'm understanding as a hillbilly, that's what you're saying with the housing bubble about to crash. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of what you're speaking to there is using real estate as a leverage point for other assets, and so loaning against it. So we're in so one of the metrics that you can look at as like things are really not going well is super long mortgages, right? So China just issued bonds that were like 50-year bonds or something like that. That is just unheard of. Like usually bonds are about 10 years. I think they go up to 20 at the most and 30 at the absolute most, but those are really rare because that's a lot of risk to be making that much money over that much time, right? So most people don't invest in that sort of stuff. I want 5 year, I want 2 year, 1 year, 10 years, something like that. That's like a normal amount of time, right? And they're issuing like 50-year bonds. And so the CMHC, so Canadian Home Mortgage Corporation, CM,
Yep.
yes, Mortgage Home Corporation, they are issuing really long-term bonds in the same way. So they're issuing mortgages in the same way. So that's how you know that things are really not looking good. And what you're looking at here is the unrealized losses of the banks, right? So if you remember back to last year, right, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, this is
Yep.
why and how they collapsed, right? Because essentially what
Right.
they did is they took out a whole bunch of loans, which is what banks do, right? So they took out a bunch of loans for people. So people put their money in, they gave a bunch of loans out to people. They had the delta, so they're making money on that, and they're like, hey, we've got a bunch of cash sitting here. What are we going to invest in? We got to be really safe about it. We're going to invest in bonds, government bonds, right? So government bonds are typically one of the safest assets because they're backed by the government, right? So treasury bonds, like T-bills, treasury bonds, that's generally known as bonds, usually, because that's one of the main asset classes that banks invest in. And so for a long time, because of where interest rates were, they were making money hand over fist on those, right? Even though they were really low
Right.
interest rates. That's what the delta is. That's the difference, the arbitrage of the how much it costs you and how much you're charging out for it, and how much you make on it, right? And so when they had to sell some of them because people were like, hey, I need money for my business, things aren't going well, I got to pull some money out. There was a run on the bank, more or less, because that's what a run on the bank is that you need money, you need money, you need money, and I only have this much money. And if I give everybody out everything they want, I don't have any money. So I'm out of money. Bank's out of money, right? That's what a run on the bank is. And so when they had those unrealized losses on their bonds, they had to start selling those bonds at a loss. And so they had to raise a bunch of money. They're like, hey, we got to raise a bunch of money because we just got to stabilize a bit. And everybody's like, you got to raise money? Whoa. Pull everything out of there, which made a run on the bank, which caused, and this all stems from the bonds, right? So if I have a bond that's now not worth as much money because there's new bonds that have a higher interest rates, well, why would I buy your garbage secondhand bond when I get
Right.
4 times as much money on a new bond? So your bonds are garbage, bro. I'm not going to buy them at that much of a premium. So you got to give me less money. I'll buy them for less, and then I get more money, right? And that's how the market works in the bond market.
Okay. Mort's girl's got a good question here, and we're going to kind of get to that in just a second, because I think the other question that I had kind of prepared for this, and what you've just given us there, is the perfect segue to that. I'm getting across my early warning, the banking watch, the threat level to collapse on a scale of 1 to 10. How long? And this is my question: how long do you think before the 1 to 10 scale, where we're at now, and before the dominoes start to fall, which I think is ultimately at the end, would answer Mort's question, just to set up to Mort's question at a more micro scale, because I think there's probably going to be some geolocated places where the dominoes are going to fall first, and the impact's going to be felt first, with the banking that is inevitable to crash, exactly like you've showed us there.
Yeah, so I'll answer that in three parts, kind of where the history is, what we can look at as a comparison that you can go back and look at yourself, what happened at those times, then kind of tell you what's happening now, and then end off with the specific part of that question, which is where and how bad. So first of all, you can look at the history of this. So where did we have banking collapses in the past? What was happening at the time? What metrics can we look at? And what was the what ultimately happened at those times, which is a
I'd
collapse,
like
right?
to say Venezuela, but they won't let us see that.
Yeah, no, we can look way closer and have way better data than that. So the last couple times that this has happened in recent memory was 2001 and 2007, 2007, 2008. So basically, that was the dot-com bomb and the global financial crisis, right? And so what I'm showing you here is these unrealized losses. These are from real estate mostly. So a lot of mortgages are underwater, meaning the commercial real estate. So commercial real estate is all underwater. So when you have a commercial real estate, there's what's known as a cap rate. So a cap rate basically means how much did it cost me to purchase or build, and how much can I rent it out, and as a percentage of what I invested, what is my yearly profit on that property. So that's what a cap rate is, more or less, is what's my profit margin on that property. So a good cap rate is typically in the neighborhood of 4 to 8%, somewhere in there. Really good ones are typically really 6 to 8%. Really bad ones are 4% or below, right? And so a lot of the real estate in Vancouver has been running at 2, 3, 4%, something like
Right,
that for years, because it's so expensive, right? And
right,
so that was before the pandemic, and now because inflation has gone up, there's been a whole bunch of businesses go out of business. They're not using as much office spaces they needed to. There's a lot of people working from home now. Offices just got obliterated in the West because people are wanting to work from home now. We've totally changed how the economy operates, right? And so if
right,
there's not enough people in these offices to warrant the company having them, well, it's an expense that is now not providing an asset, so you get rid of it. So you sell off and get rid of a whole bunch of these assets, right? And so commercial real estate is usually a 5-year fixed term. It can be variable sometimes too, but a lot of them are 5-year term. And so a lot of the real estate is coming up for renewal this year and next year. So in the US, about $2.5 trillion of commercial real estate is up for renewal, right? So they have to refinance, and they're going to be refinancing at, in some cases, nearly 5 to 8 to 10 times the amount of money that they would have to pay for the exact same asset that is now worth less. That is underwater, not making money, and not going to happen. And so you're already starting to see that all over the U.S. So the property market, that asset class of commercial real estate has a big problem. That's kind of a quick overview of what that is. So what happens if, let me just finish this point, then
yeah,
I'll hand
yeah,
it back to you. So what happens if that happens, right? So if all of these real estate companies that are managing all of these property management companies are like, yo man, we're underwater, and part of the deal that you make with the bank is they finance a lot of that, and if you can't pay that mortgage, they take it back. That's part of the deal. So it's backed by the real estate. The asset itself is how you get those loans. It's called loan to value ratio. Typically that's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 70%, typically, which means that if I have $1 billion for my project that I have to put down, I have to put down $300 million, and the bank will give me the rest so I can build my project, just to make the math simple. And so if I can't now make that payment, I give it back to the bank and say, I'm out. Like, I lose the asset. I lose whatever money I invested. I lose. The bank takes the asset. But if the bank takes the asset, that means that asset that now is worth significantly less than what they loaned out for and what they paid for it is now on their balance sheet. And that's where a lot of these losses are coming from. And so what that means in easy to understand terms is the banks are in trouble. And that's just one instance, and there's dozens of others. But that's an easy one for everybody to understand, because that's essentially what this chart is showing. Across the entire economy, all of their asset classes, all of their investments, they're underwater for a lot of those stuff. And the only reason that that they haven't collapsed yet is because there was a funding system that was created last year when SVB collapsed, so that banks could use that as a funding source and not have to realize those losses at a loss. Let me try that again. So they didn't have to sell assets at a loss and realize those unrealized losses. So that's kind of a quick overview as one of the problems.
So, and so this is me putting that together here in Canada, understanding the manufactured destabilization and the intent to have everybody's property foreclosed upon and given away to basically ultimately to BlackRock and these companies, so that they can make sure that they go back into circulation, so that they're not empty. They're not just empty vacancies and house all the newcomers. Da 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 da. All of that, whatever you want to get into the sideways of that. But that's literally where we have our government steering us, and there's apparently a communique between Justin Trudeau and somebody else stating pretty much all of that. So they're intentionally destroying us so that they can turn over all of these assets into these development and management firms.
Yeah, because the ultimate goal is central bank digital currencies. That's the ultimate goal, right? The ultimate goal is total control, direct total control of everybody and everything that is on this planet, and their ability to decide where it goes and what it does, and what it does when it goes there, right? And so, from that perspective, this makes total sense, right? And I've said this multiple times on this podcast as well, is that if this system that we currently have is working fine, and I'm happy, and I'm going to work, and my family's okay, and I've got food and everything's working, I don't need whatever nonsense bullshit that you're putting forward to replace all the stuff that I already have if it's already working. And so they have to have this system break down, so that we're desperate for the solution, right? That's the only way that we're gonna accept this clearly worse for us deal if the current deal that we have ain't working no more, right?
Well,
And so, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the only way universal basic income works is with them controlling, managing property, housing, every last micro metric. Child food programs turn into child 3 times a day programs. You're no longer even in control of what your child is eating. You don't get to go 15 minutes away from your community. They'll bring what you need by drone and drop it off for you, for make sure that you're not responsible enough. This is all being funneled into the desperation of people accepting compliance rather than the quiet misery being extended.
Exactly, and that's why I showed this, is because all of these policies have an underlying tone of communism, right? So all of Justin Trudeau's policies that he's put forward, to some degree or another, some more than others, is communism. Like, it's literally like, I'm going to do UBI, I'm going to do a child food program. Not one single policy that this freaking idiot has put forward has helped the working person reduce inflation. They've taken more of our tax money. They've given themselves a raise on the same day they increased our taxes. Like, the absolute absurdity of this stuff just boggles my mind. I'm so sick of listening to these stupid people say stupid things that as if they're smart. I just can't stand it anymore. So let me bring it back around to kind of what's happening, what to do about it, okay? Because I like talking about solutions, okay? So the question was, what's happening now? What can I look at to prove that it's happening now? And what am I going to do about it? Where's going to be hit really bad, okay? So the stuff that you can look at is a couple main points that happened during 2007 and 2008. Number one was interest rates. Every time interest rates skyrocket, it's an undue burden on the working people that are paying for these mortgages. And now, since the GFC in 2008, like, the amount of debt that's out there is orders of magnitude more. And so if you raise a percentage, the interest rate by 0.25%, well, it means a lot more if you have $1 million of debt rather than $100,000 in debt, right? When people had 18% mortgages, well, there was only like 100K, 200K, and you had, this whole thing. But, like, it's actually far more money over time to pay 5% on $1 million than 18% on 200K, right? If you do it out over time, right? So we're paying more of our money. More of our money is going to these institutions where it shouldn't be, right? Because they've broken the economy because they're so incompetent and stupid. Okay, so one of them is interest rates. One of them is unemployment, which is it was skyrocketing right now. One of them is delinquent mortgages, or people that are behind on their mortgages and credit card debt, and all of those things are going up right now. And so when she was asking about, or he, her, whatever, was asking about the when is this going to happen? It's going to be soon, at some point in the next year. I don't know exactly when. I think it's personally going to happen before the end of the year or just after the election, one of the two. But next year at the absolute most. There is no way that we're making it past 2025 without this busting all over the place.
With the ho 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 happy Independence Day and the dumpster fire called the Liberal Party.
Yeah,
um,
idiots.
some of my friends that are old time financial wizards say watch Tokyo. That'll be the first one
Yeah.
to drop. But I want to make some
It wasn't.
comparisons.
But
Pardon me?
just yeah, let me just push back on that slightly, because I agree to some degree. But China was actually the first. China has already collapsed. China is one of the main engines of one of the main drivers, one of the main engines of the economy worldwide, because it created so much demand because they were a manufacturing base. Well, all of that manufacturing is moving. And China is collapsing. So that's bad for the whole planet because they don't have as much demand. They weren't growing at 10% per year, right? And so Japan, the reason why Japan is important is because they're the second biggest owner of U.S. debt. And if they
Right.
start selling all those treasuries, that could be, or probably will be, one of the catalysts. So I agree with them in that point, in
That's
that it is important.
and that's the point where they're for John Q. Public, that's the kind of the first that they're going to be able to digest and realize. Most of us can't discuss Chinese economics,
Yeah.
but we can know that when that flare goes off of Japan, and that's kind of the onus of what they're referring to in that. And again, this is between you and I, is kind of like you're the professor and the whisperer, and I'm the northern swamp donkey. So I try to digest things for people so that they can get it, in Canadian speak back where I come from too. But this graphic that you've got pulled up here, this is kind of the Marxist, there he is in there, the Marxist version of the Hegelian dialect:
Yes,
problem,
exactly.
reaction, solution, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually another one that is legitimately the government model. They've rebranded it, repolished it, recycled it, out of the nostalgia bin of history, and it's called the PAR program, Participatory Action Research. So this is the never-ending, infinite loop of the Hegelian dialect implemented into the political spectrum,
Yeah,
right?
and I actually agree with this, because that's how the change works. You make a decision, right? You take an action. What happens with the action? Was it good or bad? We'll fix the next action and try to go in the right direction if it was wrong, or continue down that path if it was right. Like, there's nothing wrong with this process. It's who's doing it and why, and what they're actually trying to accomplish.
Right. And this is one of the most base Cole's notes terms that I'm having to kind of stimulate people to think it out a little bit. Again, it's not that they don't know, but it's just out of the side of their mind. McDonald's never got famous because they made the best burgers on the planet. They got huge because they had a system that
Yeah.
they could duplicate. And these systems, like this PAR system and cycle, is what they do. This becomes their system. They adopt it. So then we have to take a look at these systems and, okay, what is the parallel and the antidote to these systems, and duplicate that with our own system. And these are that's the path to freedom that we're trying to cover both sides of this on. Is you got to be aware of the system in order to beat the system. And this is the legitimate system that you can argue with their darn language in public at any point in time, because this is right off of their research data that I uncovered in one of those blockbuster shows that we've been doing 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Central. Shameless plug.
Yeah, hey man, got to do it sometimes. And this is kind of the point that I want to impart on people is that there are people that are organized that are working against your interests. That you personally, not you and your family, like you personally, they're like you in particular, bro. Screw you, right? There are people out there that are doing that, right? And so, how are you going to fight against that? How to work against that? Well, you have to be organized and you have to be cognizant and aware of what you're doing and why and what's happening to you, right? And so, a lot of what the stuff that I try to talk about is what is happening and what are we going to do about it, right? And so this process that I kind of devised is a simple 5-step process, right? Questions, answers, actions, results, choices. You have to make the choices, but what choice is the best choice, right? What action is going to take me closer to the result that I want? Well, I need to ask questions to get the answers so I can determine what that is, right? It all starts with questions and it all ends with results, right? And so ultimately you have to make choices, right? And so one of the things, and to bring it back to the original question that was asked, what is the area that's going to be damaged the most, right? And why, right? And so what you can look at and what you're looking for is overvalued assets, right? Because eventually when assets get crazy expensive, again, eventually they got to come down, right? And the last time this happened in this way was 2007. What happened to property prices? Well, they fell, 20, 30%. But in the Depression, everything fell 80%, right? So
Right.
what we're looking at is a bubble of all bubbles, an all asset bubble where everything will crash in
The
value.
mother of all bubbles
It
by design to bankrupt not just the country, but every
civilization.
individual
Yes.
within it. Interesting story that I hadn't uh, actually heard before, but I read about it today, and if I thought about it, I'd have pulled it up. But we hear often about the American Constitution and the men that created it, the 36 men that signed it, or 39 men that signed it, and
Hmm.
all of the parallels, all of the danger, all of the political strife of the day was exactly in parallel to what we're going through here right now. And at the end of the day, those guys that wrote one of the greatest living documents in human history
Yep.
all got financially destroyed and
Yeah.
left in ruin for doing the right thing for their country. They served their country
And their family.
and their families. Yeah, it's in crazy crazy how we don't realize the history, wash, rinse, repeat of history, and where we're at here right now. And this is something I managed to sneak onto Facebook today earlier, Bryce. It was funny. They won't let me stream any of my WhatsApp Canada stuff there whatsoever, but I managed to realize that through a VPN on my mobile device, I could still go live on my WhatsApp Canada page on Facebook, where we've got 30 some thousand people that have been basically left behind because of the censorship. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I'm really encouraging people um, to think about over the coming days, and I want people to think about it and come back to their feedback to this. People are starting to answer the question about does Canada have an identity that Trudeau tried to gaslight us with? And yes, we do have an identity. We even have our own language. English is not the same in Canada as it is in the US or in the UK or any other English speaking country.
Hmm.
And we have to own these things. And this got me
No
thinking.
do to boot it.
Right, right, eh? So we need to evolve, and this got me thinking about the difference of freedom and what freedom are we fighting for, because so often I see people, they want to fight for the life that we had 10 years ago, which I ask them, was that just not a slightly more convenient form of slavery? Don't we want absolute and real freedom? So
Yeah, we
this
want
is
way
where
better than that garbage, bro.
we have to stop fighting for an old version of slavery and start making freedom as Canadians actually deserve.
Yeah, I agree.
And that happens when we start to embrace outside of the box thinking, outside of the theater thinking, getting back to like those 5 rules of change that you have. It's funny, coincidentally, because I have the 5 rules of thumb that I roll by. Will this matter in 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, and budget my energy and resources appropriately and
Yep.
make the decisions that take take me to that. So ultimately, we're still kind of, this is one of the great things about this. We're saying the same thing, but in different ways. And these are the things that we need to unite upon, and saying the same in essence. When we're building freedom, it's even better than fighting for freedom. Who wants to fight all the time? That is negative, and it is nasty, and it is dark, and you'll spend your
Unnecessary.
whole day being and unnecessary. Exactly.
Necessary.
Unnecessary.
No, necessary. Absolutely. You got to fight for freedom, bro.
Well, we have to fight, but we have to fight smarter, not harder. We have to
I agree.
fight like Iceland did and take control, and have a few people that are brave enough to do what those men in America did, generations ago, because that's the kind of freedom we need to be fighting for, by building that kind of freedom, rather than fighting for the slavery that was just slightly more comfortable than the slavery they have right now, and the nightmare of the slavery that people finally are starting to see coming. Right? Makes sense?
It does, but unfortunately, as a kind of a little bit of a black pill, unfortunately, that Iceland is now completely
Oh
digitalized.
yes, oh yes. They had it. They
They
had
had
it,
it, had,
and then
and they
they
were
gave
like,
it
"Oh
back,
yeah."
kind of like the UK did this week, right?
Well, Nigel Farage is doing actually really good in the UK,
He is,
surprisingly.
but that was a testament to how big the fix was in, because they got one horrible globalist to a even worse, bigger, boring, programmed globalist, and but at least Nigel's close enough to bite this globalist in the heels every time he opens his mouth, which is something Sunak didn't really have. So there's absolute
Yeah.
progress,
Sunak was
in that.
none of those people were conservatives, and this is why for a long time, like the
Yeah.
conservatives really pissed me off for a long time because they're like, bro, you're not even you're just the same people with a different color. I've so much had enough of these people that are just like,
They're bound by
yeah,
the
this is
same
me. Like, oh, just
they're
no
bound
more,
by the
man, no
same
more.
contracts regardless of color. And this is one of the things I think we need to, as hard as it is, I have to encourage people to leave a little bit of their rage off of the table when it comes to understanding that most of these people, although they are committed to it now, they were duped into it, they were deceived into it, but they are now unfortunately stuck with the burden of knowing that they are contractually obligated to the same poison, no matter which side of the political spectrum they are on in our parliament. So they have to come clean on that and say, okay, maybe I didn't know I was a dummy when they forced me. They cracked the whip and I had to sign that UNSDA and that migration compact, but that has to be the dividing line. That has
Yeah.
to be the separation. Those two
Well,
documents right there alone, and they have to come clean on that. This year has to be the fundamental change. Otherwise, we don't get an opportunity to move forward and break the system.
Well, and this is kind of my ultimate point that I try to get people to understand is that we have an opportunity now because we're aware of these issues to force change, right?
100%.
We have an opportunity to force change. Are we going to take that opportunity? I don't know. I'm not completely one way or the other yet. I hope we do. We probably won't, but we have the opportunity, right? And if we push hard enough and enough people get wise to the game and say, "Yo, enough is enough. This guy's lying to me. This guy's a corrupt piece of shit. He's got to go," or he, her, whatever, doesn't really
It's
matter. But
it,
like
it's got to be more now. Right now, this year is absolutely critical
this
in my
year,
mind.
it has to be this year.
It has to be this year, and here's what I'm going to say. This, it has to move. When we look at, for me, from my perspective, Bill C-11, Bill C-18, and from the time of implementation and being passed, whether the conservatives argued them or not is irrelevant.
Yep.
The treasonous organization that has control through their coalition or alliance has implemented these policies. It
Yep.
didn't really hit. It didn't really hurt. Well, now the fire is being lit. Bill C-18 is starting to hurt really, really hard. And they're using the exact same process to do Bill C-63,
Yeah.
which,
Exactly.
given the time, it's in final reading, could get royal assent, this year, which
Yeah.
means we have less than 1 year from the time they get to that point to there is not a single live streaming podcaster free in Canada anywhere from coast to coast in this country. And there isn't a snowball's hope of hell of anybody moving the political dial or affecting the winds of political change. It has to be right here, right now, before we get to any of those kinds of things. We have to hold all parties to see these censorship measures are the existential threat to Canada right here, right now.
Yeah.
Because if we don't make this a nonpartisan Canada-wide issue, we'll never be able to squabble about anything a year from now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I try to go to the conservative events and talk about this stuff, because I've really had enough of people like not talking about this, all this stupid bullshit that people are talking about. Like, it's just I've literally had enough, bro. And if we don't have an election this year and kick Trudeau out, like the fact that this idiot can even still be putting forward legislation after being accused of treason and all of the corruption, all the stupid shit this guy's done. It's unbelievable that this guy is even allowed to put forward legislation at all, especially when they're already been proven to have acted unconstitutionally. These people should have resigned, but tyrants never resign. So we're going to have to vote these idiots out by force, and like by force specifically, I mean voting, not like voting out. Like, we have to have a referendum. We have to have something, but these idiots got to go this year.
Well, it is critical for people to understand. Thanks for Steve for bringing. Oh, this was the one I wanted to bring up, particularly because yesterday I literally held people's hand from the bill to the UNSDA, the 17 points listed right on the website, giving the exact language used in the bill that's being passed, which, if that is not the absolute confirmation that these guys are not doing their elected duties, but they are merely regurgitating what the UN is giving them and enforcing that on Canadians. I broke that down in the breaking news report yesterday. The documents, everything is in the Substack, which you guys can find in the link below this show, or pretty much anywhere where you're tuning in. But this guys is where, if we want to be able to still fight and argue, whether we agree with each other or not, if we still want to be able to fight and argue 2 years from now, 5 years from now, we better put our differences aside for at least right here, right now. We don't have to change the country, but if we don't come together and stop this damned insanity right here, right now, and we need to be breathing down the necks of every person within Trudeau's sedition caucus, conservative, like across the board, we need to be destroying their narrative consistently, not just for 5 minutes. If you can write a letter, put a stamp on it. This thing is the critical danger to Canada right now, and we got to get in front of it collectively. Sorry for railing on this, but there are so many people that don't understand the contractual obligation and the danger that UNSDA put us in. And whether people are, this is the time in history where anybody whose name on there is on those documents because they were duped into it, come clean now, and the people will support you to fight it back. It's not enough for Pierre to say he will revoke Bill C-63. He needs to get rid of it all, and we have to force him to do that right now, not next year, right now.
Yeah.
So Steve, make sure this gets out onto every platform out there for the next week, buddy.
Yeah, 100%. And if you just bring up my my thing, so this is what is the goal. So everything that you talk about in that, which I haven't watched yet, but like I know already that everything that you talk about, that this is the ultimate goal. These 4 things. If these 4 things happen, it's slavery for everybody forever, right? And that 100%. Is the ultimate goal, 100%. Right? And that's what they're trying to do it legally, because the legalese is one of their avenues to doing so. But if they collapse the economy, like they're not even going to have to do that. They've already set up all of the infrastructure necessary for when everything does collapse. They're gonna be like, hey, don't worry about it, everybody, just sign up here, give us all your information. Got this one digital ID that's basically like the barcode on your neck from back in the day. and it's all cool, man. You're just part of the system now, and we control you, right? And so the point that I'm making with this is I'm not black pilled, and even though I know all of this and a lot more that I don't talk about, even though I know all this stuff, I know that most people are good. Most people care about
Inherently good,
themselves
yeah.
and their family and their community. And there's a lot of shitty people out there, but there's a lot of good people out there. And I think there's more people that are good than bad. And if we got together and said, "Yo, these idiots that are screwing everybody around and screwing us over, they got to go. We're had enough of this shit," right? That is what the revolution and the Renaissance is all about. Not this communist absolute nonsense. These far left lunatic morons believe it. It's just so stupid. They don't even know what they're talking about. But anybody that truly cares about freedom is like, I have the ability to live my life in the way that I want to live it. As long as I don't screw over everybody else, I'm allowed to do that, right? That's the idea of freedom itself, right? And to protect that idea, you have to be a part of the solution. There's nobody that's going to come and save us. We have to put the pressure on. We have to bribe or cheat, steal, and win, because ultimately, like the place that we're going to go to is either going to be a golden age or a dark age, and I'd much rather go to a golden age than a dark age. But if we're going to get to that place,
100%.
we got to have to work at that, and we're going to have to work at it together, bro, because it ain't going to happen alone.
Any clown that is suggesting anything other than engaging in civil negotiation and diplomacy with like-minded individuals, anybody that's trying to use any of those big bad R words, if it's any R word other than Renaissance, run from those individuals, because they are dangerous to you. We are just now getting to the point where we are hitting the Overton window of change, and this is why they are crushing us so hard with the censorship, because their propaganda does not work with an equal or an opposite amount of censorship. So the more censorship that they're hammering on us, it makes me smile. It's like, here, hold my beer, adapt, improvise, and overcome, because I have faith in the people. Exactly that. And when we get to the point where people can put away the petty differences, the soap operas, and get together behind real, clear, and present dangers like Bill C-63, and they can start to get advanced warning when they get out of the censorship and get back into communicating on alternative platforms. You'll find some great suggestions on the Substack for that as well, but it makes us more difficult to frame and get bent up, because when we are proactive, we are not defending ourselves in being reactive. And that's something that I wanted to highlight, that statement specifically, because next week, guys, on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking about the next big frame that they're going to try and swirl us all into being dangerous radical criminals for asking a question. So yeah,
Not the criminals that are actually doing crime, not those criminals, just the people asking questions. Those are real.
Right.
This is the real threat to democracy, man. People asking questions. Don't trust those people, man. Just trust us that are telling you what's right and wrong.
Well, we broke down, the 330 new Stasi thought police that are on the agenda right away, and what that all costs and what that could actually do. But in the age of informational warfare, they still have room to come at us, and the next big assault is coming, and that's what I'm going to be talking about on Tuesday. And for everybody out there that is familiar with Jim Ferguson over in the UK, we're going to get a real firsthand inside discussion with him. We'll be pre-taping this one, but it'll be out on Wednesday, about from behind the scenes, about in Canadian, proper Canadian, about the now I just have to exaggerate it, from behind the scenes of the political turmoil and chaos in Clown World UK. So it's going to be a big week next week, so make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe, and share, get this stuff out. There's been so many he is on X, absolutely, Steve. He runs Freedom Train International. He's also a personal close advisor to Nigel Farage and a whole bunch of other people leading Europe down this slide to the far right, as the mockingbird mercenaries like to describe it.
Well,
But,
coming from a bunch of communists that keep saying that, I don't give a shit what they say anymore. It's
right?
stupid.
Exactly. So
Empty. That's why I started calling these far left lunatics, bro. They're so dumb; they don't even know what they're talking about, man.
I know. So at this point, it's becoming like a turkey shoot with their their programmed insanity. They go back to the playbook, but we're kind of waiting for it already. So next week's going to be all about that, guys. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. I hope you got some nuggets out of this. Stay mighty, stay strong, stay blessed, have faith, and we will see you all next week. Cheers, everybody.
Never give up, never surrender.
Amen. Amen. There is no surrender. There is only hell when we stop fighting together. And we're all going to speak. It doesn't matter what we are and want to argue about then. We'll have, but yeah, anyway. Till next week, guys.
In times of global instability, soaring inflation and massive debt, gold and silver have proven to be unshakable pillars of wealth. New World Precious Metals, based in Calgary, Canada, is a leading international brokerage. We offer an easy, secure and cost-effective platform for investing in gold and silver, including our international wholesale program and registered retirement savings accounts. Protect your money outside traditional banking with our physical precious metals, privately vaulted outside the banking system, at secure, insured exchanges worldwide. Gold and silver have been trusted assets for generations, with current projections indicating high returns. And with unprecedented demand from governments, banks, and investors, there are now shortages. Precious metals thrive during inflation, geopolitical instability, and currency devaluation. Sound familiar? Now is the time to invest in gold and silver, whether in your international investment account or by transferring registered retirement savings accounts. Experience the security of physical precious metals, combining the safety of physical assets with the flexibility of being like your own bank, offering instant liquidity and a financed line of credit. With precious metals on the rise, don't miss this generational opportunity to protect your wealth. At New World Precious Metals, we ensure your wealth meets its potential. Contact us today and our personal brokers will guide you every step of the way.